I thought it would be helpful to show how you can use Excel to calculate grades for a class. So I'm going to walk through it in a couple of different scenarios using the if-then statements in Excel. So to start, here's my basic information. Here is my students, Joe, Barbara, Jane, Stan, and Kathy, and here are their scores on their 3 tests. So to calculate a grade for the class, you have to figure out what their average is. So the average for Joe is 74.3, and this is a very simple function. You can see it up here at the top, equals average. And anytime we are doing something in Excel, if we want Excel to recognize it as a command, you type it in all caps. So the average is typed in all caps, and then we have an opening parenthesis, and then we select the range that we want to average. So the range is the 3 test scores of 85, 78, and 60. So we go B10, colon D10, and you can either type that in manually or you can just click and drag. And then you have your closing parentheses to tell Excel that's the end of the statement. So in this, you can see we have averages of 74, 86, 68, 91, and 59. Now, this is a simple method of doing it because everything is just 3 tests, all worth 100 points. So you take their average, and that is the grade. So now, in this example, I set up the scale as being 90 to 100 is an A, 80 to 90 is a B, so on down to below 60 is a D. So what we do is we use the if statement in Excel. And here is the actual formula that I have typed in that gets you the answer, and I'm going to walk through that. So the command that you're going to want to use is called the if command. I really think of it as an if-then statement. So for every if statement, you have to have a then statement. So we start off with equals, and then we type in if in capital letters, and then we have an opening parentheses, and we're going to say if E10 is greater than 0.9, because in percentages, this may be 74.3%, but if you were to look at this as a regular number without the percentages, you obviously move your decimal 2 points and it becomes 0.74. So if our scale is 90 to 100 is an A, then we say if E10, which is where the average is greater than 0.9, so that's the end of our if statement. So when we get the end of the if statement, we put in a comma. Then we tell Excel what is the then comment. So if we say if E10 is greater than 9, then the student gets an A. So we want to tell Excel that if we've told it this is the if part, then after we have the comma, now we're going to say the then part. Now we want it to type in A as a text. Excel kind of generally thinks that things are formulas or numeric values unless you tell it to read it otherwise. So the way we tell Excel to read it otherwise is to put in quotation marks. So the quotation marks tells Excel, stop reading things as formulas and numeric values and start reading them as text. So then we put in A. So we want it to return the value of A being the letter grade. Then we put in a closing quotation mark to tell Excel, okay, now stop reading everything as text and go back to reading it as formulas or numeric values. So this is our first statement, if then. So if greater than 0.9, then A. Now, then we will just repeat this for the B, C, D, and F grades, but I want to go back to show something that is a common formula error. We start if, and then we have a parenthesis. When you have an opening parenthesis, you have to have a closing parenthesis. So the closing parenthesis is the end of the statement that comes at the end. But for every opening parenthesis, you have to have a closing parenthesis. So if we have 5 opening parentheses, we have to have 5 closing parentheses. So here is our first opening parenthesis. Then we have one for the formula for B and C and D and F. So that is 5 opening parentheses. Then we get to the end and we have 5 closing parentheses. It's important to note that the closing parentheses come at the end of the statement, so you don't want to put a closing parenthesis after the A, after the B, after the C, Excel is going to not read that correctly. So continuing on, then we just do another if statement. So if E10 is greater than 0.8, comma, quotation mark, B. So if you are greater than 0.8, it's a B. So Excel is going to naturally read this by saying, oh, okay, if I hit the first criteria, A, I stop. If I don't, I go to the second if statement. If I hit it there, then Excel stops. If not, I go to the third, etc. And I get all the way down here to the last one. Now I have changed, instead of greater than, I have changed it to less than. So now if we are less than 0.6, the student gets an F. So that is the formula, and I've calculated it to say the scale is, again, 90 is an A, 80 is a B, 70 is a C, etc. And we go through all this to come up with Joe gets a C, Barbara gets a B, Jane gets a D, and once you've done one formula, you can just copy and paste it all the way down. But that is the simple version if there are just 3 tests all worth 100. But I think it's also good to show what if it's not a simple version. What if there are tests that are worth hundreds, homework that are worth something else, and quiz that are worth a third value? So I did this down here and said, okay, we have 3 tests, which are the same things we had before. Now we have 3 homeworks that are only worth a maximum of 25 points, and we had 2 quizzes that are only worth 10 points. So you can't just calculate an average, a simple average, because you're going to get a very low number that have everybody fail because the homeworks are only worth 25 points and the quizzes are only worth 10. So what we do is we say, what are the total points that the student accumulated? In this case, Joe accumulated 302. What are the total points possible, which would be hundreds on the tests, 25 on the homework, and 10 on the quizzes. So the maximum they could have accumulated was 395 points. So now we just change our formula for the average to say that he got 302, which is cell J19, which J19 is just a sum of all of these. So it is now J19 divided by the total points possible, which I put it in as, you could have just typed in the number 395 if you wanted to. And then you can see we're doing it the same way all the way down, always dividing by J25. But you still come up with, it's just a different way of coming up with the average. Once you've come up with the average, then this formula is very much the same as what we had before. It is just that now this formula is doing it based on an average that's calculated from the total points instead of a straight average. So you can see in this, Joe still gets a C, Barbara still gets a B. Jane was able to pull her grade up to a C because of the homework and the quizzes, and Kathy was able to pull hers up to a D. But that is how you calculate grades using the average value and then the if-then statement with multiple functions or multiple statements. So hope that is helpful if anybody is ever trying to figure out their own grade, or any student or any teachers are trying to use Excel to calculate the average for a person and what grade that relates to. So hope you enjoyed the video, and if there are any other Excel functions that you would like to see a video on, please let me know in the comments section and I will try to do a video on them.